Good morning. It's a cool morning in Sydney, but it's going to hot up. And I wanted to give some detail about this very important document of memories that was sent to me on request by a dear old friend of my mother's who, as an adult, was witness to some pivotal things in our lives. And the reason why I needed to get this kind of counterbalance is because maybe about 4 months ago, maybe five, I was subject to a kind of set of statements, to put it that way, that alleged that my account of what we grew up with was a set of distortions, and that this individual, a sibling, could not recognize herself, her experiences in the family life so portrayed. There's a couple of things to note before I go into the document of memories, witness account, which is very important. This sibling often casts a light of uncertainty on my memories because of a 7-year age difference, and likes to position themselves as kind of the omniscient narrator of the family. That's no one's position. No one can be in all spaces and at all times, even if they're talented as a writer. That's the first point. The second point is everyone has different relationships with their parents, right? And different memories. The most important thing, though, is a denial of both the extent of DV and also a claim that I had retracted. My testimony, the reality of what happened to me as a child in what we call CSA. So I'll just leave it there. I'm not going to get graphic. But this was kind of like a dual injury because it came in a time when I was reaching out for maybe just moral support around my criminal injury case, and where I felt that, like other siblings, this sibling embraced that truth since I had disclosed as a very young person, right? So I work with people who are survivors. There is a reason why I do, because it goes beyond the personal. Personally, for me, I do need a sense of redress and justice, that's true. And I think that survivors need to be able to talk. Yeah. Very often, the cultural taboo is to speak about it. Writing about it, not so much. And we're expected to accommodate constantly other people's feelings about how they might experience guilt, disbelief, want to discount you, etc. So that prefaces it. Then there's also definitional slippage around what constitutes any kind of FV, right? So in this video, I had talked about how the kind of physical abuse, in this case, or assaults, were kind of pretty much daily. And that's where they picked bones with me. I think that they also judged that my estimation of growing up in economic insecurity was skew-if, off balance, a distortion, again, thus not recognizing anything in what I said about our family life. But the fact of the matter is there is a 7-year difference, and my recall also concerns the kind of insecurities that erupted in the wake of my parents' divorce, right? And living in an area of the Armidale-Kelmscott district that is very well known, according to SEIFA Index, right? That's SEIFA, to be an under-resourced, often quite difficult environment, marginalized, and all of these are facts. Of course, people have different experiences. It's mainly working class, but there are some middle class families in the Greater Armidale-Comscott district, and I'm talking about that late 80s, early 90s. This individual, by the pretty much the tipping point, had moved out, right, and wasn't living in the home environment, and didn't go to the schools that I went to, didn't have to have access visits like I did. So their claim that they recognise nothing in what I said as being part of our family life is biased by that time scale, and also by the differences in the relationship. So that's really important to underline. But let me go back to this witness account, okay? So yes, it may well be disputed how frequent physical and psychological abuse might be framed, but to actually pick a bone and try to undermine someone that way, and then also say that they retracted their account of CSA, is a form of aggression. It's full frontal, and this person has never apologized. I've just shut the door on them because it's actually a form of cruelty, emotional cruelty and secondary harm and re-victimization in legal terms. But bringing in this account of my mother's friend, she gave a very frank account, and the sibling that even disputes that the sort of cause of the final breakup, the divorce, was just that my mother got pushed, is lining up with my father's account and also what the court upheld. Women are immersed in situations of not being believed. How ironic. Myself, now as an adult woman, yes, also being disbelieved. I'd like to know where the feminism is in that. Oh, this person may say nothing is black and white, right? But the fact of the matter is, the friend's memories and witness account attest to the fact that there was medical evidence and also photographs of extensive bruising, which are consistent with an aggression, not just an accident. You hear me? So yes, the politics of memory. But then there's also the fact that in their witness account, they talk about my mum hiding in the garden, right? So this is prior to this incident, which resulted in the breakup and the divorce proceedings, because of fearing my father with his rages. This sibling says, yes, in our childhood there was just shouting and yelling, but that's not ongoing DV. So you can see that this is actually a tactic or a strategy, maybe for them to be able to live with it more easily, to accommodate mentally their own form of survival, but to deny the truth, right? Including as witnessed by people in the neighborhood, yeah? Including given my father's decision to move us from that particular property because of the public knowledge about his behavior, is just telling. Not only did my mother hide in the garden at times until he settled down, because he's a massive alcoholic, by the way, but also she remembers a very pivotal night that is unforgettable for me. Now, sibling who's older can say, what would you know? You were almost pre-verbal. I'm joking, I wasn't pre-verbal. They would countenance the fact that we lived in fear and trauma, but I remember very clearly what motivated this individual to come with a rock in hand, a small woman compared to a big bear of a man, imposing, who tried to prevent us after my mum saying, don't hit me. She had enough. And this wasn't the first night. She went over and she demanded that my father stop, and she held that rock in her hand. She intervened. This is a very brave act. When there was a chink in the door, because all of us children were sort of gathered, around the door trying to get out. My father was trying to stop us from getting out. She managed to say, show the rock, and my father was unable to keep the door shut, and one by one she pleaded with all of us to file out and seek refuge in her house, which was the neighboring house, which we did. All but one sibling, who that sibling decided to stay in the house where the aggression was being undertaken. And so it's unclear how long we were at the neighbour's house, but apparently we filed back when things were laying low, when it was late, and perhaps my father in his drunken stupors had fallen asleep, when my mum deemed it safe. Of course it wasn't safe, and these things didn't change even if there was a move and my father swearing that he would be a good father and all those sorts of things, and that they would hold together the marriage. So it's very valuable to have this adult's perspective. It wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't a not ongoing DV situation. The police were called on that occasion, and my father actually called the police first to claim that the neighbour was aggressing him. Then she related to the police when they did show up as a result of my father's call, in parallel with the neighbour's call. And she explained, no, that's not the story. And so the patrol car actually stayed outside of her house where we were all hiding and very traumatized, and managed to kind of surveil. They said they couldn't do anything because there's no physical evidence of any kind of assault, but that they would be there to observe the house over the night. When my mother actually was aggressed physically, you can call it being pushed. You could, the language doesn't matter. The fact is, it wasn't an accident, okay? And this is part of a pattern. It's part of a pattern. So when that happened, she filed assault charges and later for divorce. And she lost in court because of my father arguing that she just fell. So I wonder why this sibling has accepted that version, right? And also questions the previous account of the previous wife and whether she was hit or not. This is deeply unfeminist, and I would say if you are listening to this video right now because you do like to snoop into my videos and then pick them apart, you ask yourself, is that feminist? Are you protecting your own vulnerabilities to memory and trauma? If so, I understand it. Or are you actually upholding the law of the father and all kinds of images of men and women? It's not just a personal thing, it's a systemic thing. I make a commitment to opposing violence, male violence against women and children. It's not just a politic. It comes out of lived experience, of being victimized, of having to navigate social services as a result of trauma when I fled the site of those historic aggressions where home was never safe. And I didn't use fragments of stories of these experiences and turn them into some kind of poetic fairy tale. I didn't, because I see these as issues of justice, when justice is not served historically as well. I speak with truth. I'm not here to be interrogated by a family member who, for their own form of accommodation, wishes merely to cast me out. I would say, though, that every other sibling corroborates with me these particular stated facts that the neighbour has also attested to. And they support me. Every other sibling, including my younger brother, supports me in believing me as a survivor. They know about the letter that I wrote to my father to say we could only have a conditional relationship because, of course, he was very sick and I needed to be able to deal with that psychologically and also give a heads up as an adult that he was no longer a threat to me and see him as an older man because many years had passed. But I wrote in the letter that if he, in person, by phone, or in replies to letters, tried to dispute the abuse, I would cut him off immediately. There was a recognition there. That letter exists. I never retracted my story, my reality, what happened to me. That will form the basis of the criminal injury case. I am in a good ethical position. I'm not someone spreading fictions or distortions. So this is very important to set the record straight. And I want, if this sibling is snooping, a reminder here that I have a voice. I'm not crazy or, going hormonal because of being in transition, which is also deeply sexist, by the way. The mask of concern. It's a very white woman kind of turn, isn't it? As a friend of mine told me. I have had to deal with things in life, such as homelessness, financial instability, working in informal economies, in precarious economies to try to survive, being in therapy most of my adult life. This means I'm actually a well-grounded individual, but I did that all on my own without any support from family. And also, I recognized that financial support wasn't possible because we came from a working class background. For example, when I finally graduated from, yes, can you believe it, my PhD, my mother couldn't afford a plane trip to come and I couldn't finance it either. I've lived through experiences that this sibling hasn't. They have a different trajectory. And in fact, their public face is quite different from their private, especially with their exchanges with me. But with respectful distance, but also setting the records straight, I will say this: I'm a writer. I will and am publishing. They will have to deal with their own internal contradictions, but also that this work has merit independently of the sort of backstory. I know in a capacity the realities, complex that they were about my father, in a way that they never understood. I come from a different positionality, with a different set of experiences. But the recent witness account was both bracing, difficult for the person to write, of course, but I feel deeply seen and vindicated. So the last thing I will say is, why is it in families certain people feel the need to tamp down what they see as exaggerations, to make over into their supreme version what happened in family, and also to short-circuit, I should say, the possibility that actually they didn't see things, not everything. For example, they weren't on the access visits. They weren't there. But then on disclosure, to be then disbelieved, even if more recently, and discredited by email, that puts them in a very murky ethical position. I'd like to see the same degree of reflexivity that one might witness in someone's writing, as in the exchanges and the forms of enunciation that to me have given not just meaning but a record of my experiences, that they be honoured, that I as an individual, as a consequence, also be honoured and not treated as if I'm disposable as some kind of distorting person, indeed damaging in some way or damaged. These are all techniques of people who try to gaslight you. And the truth will out.